Okay, I think we're ready to go. So I'll get cracking. Good morning and good afternoon, webinar attendees and panelists. Great to have you all here today. We'll be talking about supercharging C-suite sales with B2B thought leadership with our special guests from OneStream and Intel. So a quick intro from me. I'm Fiona Buckley, Technology Divisional Director here at Man Bites Dog. And for those of you who don't know Man Bites Dog, we're an award-winning global B2B thought leadership and strategic marketing consultancy, nice mouthful. We work with intelligent brands that are built on knowledge and expertise, selling high-value strategic services and technologies to the C-suite across many sectors, including financial services, technology, professional services, advanced manufacturing and mobility, energy and sustainable infrastructure. We've recently undertaken a transatlantic study uncovering C-suite buying behaviours in major B2B organisations and exploring what makes the difference between a thought follower and a thought maker. This research reveals a compelling truth. C-suite executives now view content from brands as a primary source of truth. So with that, I'm pleased to welcome our panel for the discussion today. We have Man Bites Dog CEO and founder, Claire Mason. We have Tim Minahan, SVP and Chief Marketing Officer at the enterprise finance management platform OneStream, and Caryn Herder Fritz, Sustainability Initiative Lead of the semiconductor design and manufacturer, Intel. So thank you very, very much for joining everybody today. I'm going to ask you all to actually do a much more comprehensive introduction than I've just done there, just so you can set the context for where you are in the industry, where you sit in the industry and your views on thought leadership. So with that, Claire, can I ask you to kick off, please? Thank you.
Of course, thanks, Fiona. Yeah, really excited to be here today with our fantastic panel. I'm Claire Mason, founder and CEO of Man Bites Dog, and I have 30 years B2B marketing experience building intelligent brands for tech, professional and financial services firms. And it's a great honor to work with some of the world's smartest firms to create thinking that drives reputation and sales. So it's exciting to be here today to talk about thought leadership because, as we were just saying in the green room with Tim, it's very much our favourite subject. So yeah, looking forward to the insights from our panel today.
Thank you. And over to you, Tim.
Fantastic. Thanks, Fiona. Yeah, I'm Tim Minahan, the Chief Marketing Officer here at OneStream. Those of you who aren't familiar with OneStream, it's really the leading enterprise finance platform. We help the Office of the CFO unify their data, harness the power of AI for faster, more accurate forecast plans and decisions, all for the purpose to help finance, take finance further. Now, I've been fortunate enough to have spent my career at really the intersection of technology and business transformation. I've held chief marketing and chief strategy roles at companies like Ariba, SAP Cloud, and Citrix, and now OneStream. And I'm really passionate about how digital platforms and AI are really reshaping the way we work. And I'm incredibly excited to get to join you, the experts from Man Bites Dog, Caryn, to discuss really the experiences and lessons learned over the course of my career on leveraging thought leadership to foster engagement and a more meaningful dialogue.
Thank you very much. And finally, Caryn.
I'm Caryn Herder Fritz, and my career has taken me through sales, agency strategy, as well as the corporate marketing and communications positions. In working in a lot of multinational corps, it's really brought around this appreciation for culture, and working in technology for over 30 years, it's also understanding that engineers and CFOs, they're all people. And so what I like to really bring in is the appreciating the cultures and the psychology of it all, and really trying to get to that emotional trigger in the brain to help people make business decisions.
Excellent. Well, thank you very much, Caryn, for that. So let's get started and let's talk a little bit about thought leadership itself and what that really means. It means a lot of things to a lot of different people, I think, in the industry. So Claire, would you like to sort of talk around your vision and your thoughts around the definition of thought leadership and why it matters.
Absolutely. As you say, I think thought leadership must be one of the most misunderstood terms in the business canon. So let's start with a definition. Well, what does it mean to me? It means storytelling that motivates action, a transformative idea that makes your customers think or rethink about an opportunity or a threat that you can help them navigate. All content is not born thought leadership. We're not talking about random acts of content. We're talking about the big agendas and the big campaigns that provide firms with a platform for growth. And as Caryn said, actually, the psychology of this is really important. You need a big idea in order to grab attention and engage people at that emotional level. But when you're selling to a complex B2B buying unit, you also need substantial data to really evidence the opportunity or threat that you're raising awareness of. So this is what we would call the man bites dog thought leadership equation. And the reason this matters is that thought leadership is really the smart growth strategy for intelligent brands. Because if your organization is built on knowledge and expertise and you're selling high value, bet the farm products and services to the C-suite, you better make sure your thinking is good. And thought leadership is the best way to showcase the intelligence that you're selling. You can't tell people you're smart, you have to show them.
Okay, well, thank you very much. And we recently launched, as I mentioned earlier, the Thought Makers Report. Would you like just to talk us through what that is, why you did it, why we did it? And we've also got just a few slides on some of the really key insights that we got from the research study. So I'll keep going with a few slides for now, Claire. If you would like just to sort of give us an overview on Thought Makers, that would be great.
Sure. So Man Bites Dog is going to be celebrating our 20th anniversary in April, which is very exciting. And we were the very first thought leadership consultancy, really pioneering thought leadership as a bridge from brand to sales. So we wanted to mark the milestone by creating some big thinking of our own. So we got a bit meta here and focused on thought leadership about thought leadership to examine the state of thought leadership today and its future direction. And some of the findings I'm going to be sharing to kick us off today are based on a major C-suite study of transatlantic business decision makers in the world's largest multi-billion-dollar companies in the US and the UK, looking at how they engage with thought leadership from their strategic suppliers and how you can use it to supercharge brand and sales. So for me personally, one of the most interesting findings is the fact that B2B brands have emerged as a key source of truth. 94% of business leaders consume content created by business brands at least once a week, and 55% of them consume that content multiple times daily. And as if that wasn't interesting enough, what's even more interesting is that business leaders now trust content from business brands more than content from the media, government or public institutions. So that really gives business brands a huge responsibility to produce responsible content, but also gives them an immense opportunity to really lead transformation agendas. One of the questions clients often ask us is, oh, can we be a thought leader? Do people really want to hear from us? And the answer to that is an emphatic yes. More than 3/4 of C-suite leaders expect their strategic suppliers to challenge them on emerging trends and issues. And they told us that they're increasingly reliant on these strategic suppliers for innovation, for insights on where the market is going, and to business case investments and transformations that they want to bring about. And another critical finding is that they really see thought leadership as part of the value exchange, one of the reasons to work with you. And this value exchange will be rewarded. So thought leadership content is not just attracting attention, as we said before, with that emotional connection and building trust. It's also directly driving sales, not just at the brand and demand end of the funnel, but also at the conversion end as well. So 74% of C-suite leaders told us that they always consider a strategic supplier's thought leadership when making a buying decision. So these really hard to reach C-suite leaders are actively seeking out your content. And you've really got to think about, is your insight that insightful? Like, do you feel proud of what's on your website and what your brand is putting out there? Are you happy to be judged on that? Does it give you a platform to grow the business, or could you improve it? Business leaders told us that they're more likely to buy from you if they see you as a thought leader. And it also makes relationships stickier. They're more likely to continue a relationship. And we also did some investor research, which showed that investors are more likely to invest in a company where they see the CEO and actually the more all-important CFO as a thought leader as well. Your clients really understand thought leadership as well, because they want to be thought leaders themselves. They see it as the best way for them to build their own brand and reputation, and the best way to support profitable conversations with clients and prospects. And they see it as part of the value that they're providing to their customers and to wider society as well. But it's not just about the big thinking and the big idea. As we said before, they really want that substantial data. 3/4 of these business leaders told us they're more likely to read or engage with content that's supported by that original proprietary research. So as we said, many people would claim to be thought leaders, but not everyone makes the grade, and not all content makes the grade either. So what we want to introduce today is a new category of thought leadership. The thought maker is the highest form of thought leader, evaluated by Man Bites Dog's thought leadership matrix, which you can see here. And along the bottom, we have the differentiation axis, and along the top, the amplification axis. So thought maker status is based on exceptional differentiation, so the extent to which your idea is cutting edge, is new, and exceptional amplification of ideas. So as Tim was talking about earlier, it's the thought leadership is very key, but it's also about how you deploy it, how you bring it to life, and how you use it to grow your brand and your business. So I think of thought leadership as a wave, with thought makers in the vanguard applying energy to start that kind of new wave of thinking. Thought shapers then come in behind to surf the second wave by applying new, different perspectives on that second wave. And then by the time you get to the end of the wave, the energy really has dissipated. And that's where thought followers are sitting, where they're churning out very sort of Me Too content that's actually quite brand damaging. And along the bottom here, you have thought whisperers who might have fantastic ideas, but they fail to share their thinking. So they're not able to monetize or gain value from them. So I think we can have an interesting debate about this today, but the pressure is on to kind of win this thought leadership battle. And there are clear winners and losers in B2B in terms of intelligent brands. So interestingly, the big four in the UK have maintained their status as the leading thought leaders. And what clients are really appreciating is that they are producing very strong research-based content that is highly targeted at specific types of C-suite, members of the C-suite. But interestingly, in the US, the tech firms have now leapfrogged the accountancy firms, because people really, really want to hear from tech firms about these transformative technologies, AI, quantum, cyber, and so on. And so there's huge demand to hear from tech firms, but there's also a feeling amongst these business leaders that while they want to hear from them and they may trust them more than they trust mainstream media, a lot of the tech thoughtware doesn't make the grade. It doesn't talk business enough, and it isn't in depth enough to business case what they want to achieve. And then we see management consultancies and engineering firms following on behind. Management consultancy thought leadership is often hived off in an arm's length institute. Clients don't like that because they want to hear from practitioners, which is why they want to hear from tech firms. Engineering firms are sleeping giants, over-reliant on past projects to tell their stories. So they really need to elevate their expertise more. Financial services firms are coming in behind because they tend to produce content that is random acts of content, that is byproduct exhaust content rather than highly targeted, highly engaging content. And then law firms, sadly, coming in at the very end because their thinking tends not to be big, tends not to be bold, and tends not to talk business. It can be overly focused on the general counsel without having that wider C-suite appeal. So this is what the business leaders told us. Don't shoot the messenger. And I'm sure we'll have some really interesting insights from Caryn and Tim on this today.
Brilliant. Well, thank you very much for that oversight. There is a full report, of course, and people can go away and download that or check it out on our website. We're very happy to share that. But as you said, Claire, the sort of big story here is that according to the US data, tech firms are the most trusted in terms of content, overtaking the accountancy firms. That inherent trust and high demand is really there to sort of hear from your experts. But firms are continuing to sort of focus a little bit too much perhaps on just the product portfolio story. And that's really complicated, isn't it? Particularly in tech, it's a complicated portfolio of tech stack. The technology moves so quickly. And you can often lose the opportunity as a tech operation to sort of be seen as a thought maker and have a sort of very muddy vision or not a vision at all. So with that in mind, I'm going to throw it over to you now, Tim. I know you recently launched Finance 2035 to the market. Can you just give us a sort of an overview of what that was and how you've sort of seen that impact ripple through the organization and your customers globally, partners?
Sure. Great, Fiona, and happy anniversary to you and Claire and the whole team there.
Party time.
And thanks for sharing that research. I'll have to download the report. A lot of great insight there and items I firmly believe in. So just to give you a little bit of background, I joined OneStream probably about a year and a half ago, really because of the truly differentiated capabilities of the platform. What I saw is this market opportunity within the office of the CFO and the incredible customer loyalty, which really, candidly bordered on fanaticism. And it was very clear that finance professionals that knew of OneStream really loved OneStream, but not enough of the market really knew who OneStream was, the value we delivered, or really the mission we were on to help take finance further. And so to break through, we knew we needed to be more, a lot of the themes that Claire just mentioned, more than just a preferred technology platform. We needed to be that trusted advisor that truly understood the challenges and the hopes and the opportunities of the office of the CFO. And we needed to have a way to engage senior finance professionals, as well as other business leaders, really, in an ongoing dialogue of how the role of finance is evolving beyond just reporting on past performance and into a more strategic driver of business innovation and growth. And so we view the initiative that we took part with your help, our Finance 2035 initiative, not really just as a study, but really as more of a movement, if you will. That's why we call it the Finance 2035 initiative. Obviously, it began with a global study into the future of finance. And so with the help of Man Bites Dog, we surveyed and interviewed over 2,000 CFOs, CEOs, line of business leaders. And with your guidance, I thought a really good angle, bringing in the investor community and helping, trying to understand how they're seeing the role of finance evolve, the competencies that were required, the expectations to really become that champion of strategic growth. And then we harnessed this research into really a multifaceted program that was designed, number one, to drive an authentic dialogue in the market, right? To engage, to provide valuable insight, and to foster discussion amongst CFOs and chief accounting officers and other finance execs. And so we reached that broad market through channels you might think about, creating a microsite that shared the research, social and digital campaigns, and of course, earned media. This really gave us an opportunity to have OneStream be presented in tier one media with as a trusted advisor, not just as a technology provider. And our media coverage, because of that, is really ticked up in tier one media. We also engaged CFOs and other finance leaders through a series of executive roundtables and speaking slots around the world, right? As well as showing up at premier CFO conferences that already existed, where CFOs were already attending, and bringing this new insight. And that's really allowed us to, reach new contacts, but also to continue to engage with them with additional research and events and programs and dialogues. And there's just still so much more we can do, with this thought leadership initiative.
Brilliant. Thank you. And it's got so much longevity, as you mentioned. There's a lot to do with it. It gets that dialogue going, builds that community. sparks new debate, new controversies, new ways of finding solutions to business problems. So I'm glad it's going well. So far, so good. That sounds brilliant. And the partnership element to your program, I thought was felt particularly successful, as you say, sort of really growing that global community. So thank you very much. And
Yes.
Caryn, you recently launched the Sustainable CTO platform and also the Sustainable Intelligence Index for Intel, which sort of revealed which sectors are really making the greatest progress in harnessing AI for sustainability and for solving sustainability issues. Can you talk a little bit about the business drivers for your platforms and the impact that you've seen in the organization and beyond?
Sure, Fiona. The interesting thing is, in technology, it's a group buying decision. So, once again, we're trying to find the champions, and Intel as an ingredient brand has always been, taking the approach of trusted advisor.
Yeah.
Yet, how do you connect once again we were looking at other research, we were triangulating and seeing that we had the business C-suite interested in sustainability, but the tech C-suite wasn't.
Yeah.
And that's when we engaged with Man Bites Dog. It's like, let's understand. We want to unpack the why behind that what stat. And as we did that global research, that was the interesting thing, right? Man Bites Dog found the two value, conversations here that we could have, because one was about using technology to lower carbon, lower power, energy use. But the other one was how to use technology to become more sustainable and empower others to become more sustainable. So we found these two conversations that we could be having with this tech C-suite, but yet you unpacked that they didn't think they knew enough about it to make it their job. They wanted to just, de facto, yep, that seems to live in the, C-suite business side of the mind. And I think technology could help, but they didn't know enough about all of the, regulatory requirements around CSRD and such they felt they couldn't own a seat at the table.
Yeah.
And so as we identified that, it was like, wow, this is a topic that more and more, of our customers would want to discuss, because a lot of people want to become CTOs, so it wasn't that we were just trying to get to a CTO. It's all of the people that are looking for their career paths. And
Yeah.
This is a conversation that, once again, we can emotionally click with and help people understand you can have a role.
Yeah.
But also triangulating once again with, oh my, all of the industry conversation about AI taking so much energy. So it wasn't necessarily about being sustainable. Once again, energy costs a lot of money. So we were connecting that follow-on, index with the business value of AI and trying to trigger that conversation. So it was a multi-dimensional platform, and that's what great thought leadership is, because sometimes you can't win it in just a short spurt campaign. Thought leadership is more of a steady drumbeat. And that's, what we did, Claire, with your waves, right? The index then started helping people unpack it by their market segment. And that's what's really, helping the conversation extend.
Brilliant. Well, thank you. Thank you. I'm glad we're still riding that wave there of thought leader, thought maker, definitely with the Sustainable Intelligence Index. Fantastic. And just going back to tech firms being the most sort of trusted advisors to the C-suite in the US particularly, and more specifically to CFOs, Tim, why do you think the trust is changing and that tech companies are coming out on top? Why do you think that is?
Yeah. I'm somewhat biased on this topic. So what I didn't include in my introduction was, before I joined the dark side of software marketing, I was a research analyst and an advisor to corporate clients and tech companies alike. And while we drove a considerable amount of our primary research on our own, and in fact, I think it was Claire that said this before, I was always fascinated by my briefings with the executives, the product managers, and even the marketers, yes, of software companies that I was covering, right? They had just had this incredible, unique, and wide purview of the market. And I think that showed up in your research, right? They engaged with far more customers and clients that I could ever do so personally. And that just gave them really valuable and meaningful insight as people were trying to figure out, which direction do I go? How do I harness these new technologies? And, flash forward to today, and, the business and the technology landscape is, evolving, at a more frenetic pace than ever. New regimes and policies and regulation and deregulation, if you will, is turning the world of business upside down. And business leaders who are already struggling just to digitize their business are now being kind of overwhelmed by an urgent need to understand how to harness the power of new technologies, especially AI. And they're all, kind of looking to the office of the CFO to help them navigate these waves and uncertain waters. And, in the context of the CFOs are smart, but not because they know all the answers, I've found, but because they know where to go for the answers, and what I learned as an analyst, they see technology vendors as having a unique and kind of broad purview of the market. And they look to the tech firms, not just for software, but for insights into how they should be evolving their processes, how they manage data, how they do analytics, and how they should harness technology to, do so better, faster, cheaper.
Excellent. Thank you. And do you agree with that, Caryn? Why do you sort of think
Absolutely.
that US tech firms are taking the lead in being the trusted advisor in the market? Is it because of their scale, perhaps, as well, their level of growth, the pace of change?
It's the scale, right? They are, as Tim was saying, they're out working with every enterprise. So they're seeing what's working, what's not. They're testing, they have, great R&D themselves. So they're the ones that have been experimenting and seeing what's working with AI, what's not, what to be careful of. They know cybersecurity, better than just an average firm, right? So the tech companies are, so once again, technology is what's driving the transformation.
Yeah.
So that's where we've got a good sweet spot there.
And with the sort of onslaught of some very high quality thought leadership, Claire, this is for you now. And the fact that we know through the survey and through our relationships with clients and years of activity, we know it creates a sort of deeper relationship, way beyond engagement. You talked a little bit about the value exchange when you were going through the slides, but is there anything else you can sort of add to that, and why you think that's happening so much more?
I think because, as Tim touched on, the pace of change is so rapid, and it's really hard to find people that there's a precedent for what people are doing when it comes to this new technology. So I think, as you say, the tech firms have this incredible insight, but where they often fall down is not actually then marketing that insight back to clients and prospects. I think that value exchange is really important, and we're increasingly seeing it happen at a thought leadership level, where I think a lot of firms have started to realize the value of their thoughtware and that they really need to improve it and not just have these random acts of content, but actually elevate and talk to the C-suite about business value. But also we're seeing sort of the cascading of this content through kind of every channel and into account-based marketing as well. So how you can really personalize the content to support the kind of conversations that you want to have. And we're seeing that right across the board in terms of thought leadership that really bridges all the way from brand to sales a lot more deliberately. A lot of what we do involves kind of creating a gateway service that will bridge from the content to the conversation that you want to have, whether it's an assessment with a client or customer, but actually making sure there's a call to action for an actual engagement as well at the end. Because I think a lot of people create thought leadership and see it only as brand and demand. They don't actually think about how to deploy it for conversion as well.
Yeah, conversion and community building, I think then that keeps that sort of, valued relationship going. And Caryn, what are your thoughts on what's holding back some global organizations from being thought makers? Why do you think some companies just don't find it, that they just can't do it in a way that is effective for them? Why do you think that might be? Because there's a lot of companies struggling.
There's a laser focus on, revenue, right? Marketing becoming a revenue engine, which is then a focus on product sales.
Yeah.
So, and there still needs to be this acknowledgement that other topics can engage and bring that value exchange that could support product sales.
Yeah.
Right? And it is, like Claire said, find that bridge and help everyone understand. There's a drop-off point that does then lead to product. But in many of the organizations that I've worked with on the agency side of life, we got to focus on product.
Yeah. Do you think that the mind shift's really happening in terms of with the tech firms, particularly around that sort of strategic thought leadership? Do you think that the penny's dropping, people are getting there? Is it an education problem internally, do you think? As you say, people trying to hit their number quarter-based quarter?
I think there's still education that needs to happen, and we have to show the value and show them the engagement that can really happen. And some of that is still getting sales. Like marketing is the one that can start this, but the real power of it happens with sales conversations.
Yeah.
And it's getting the sales organization believing that this level of conversation is necessary, but also getting them comfortable with having it, because many of them aren't, once again, they know how to talk the product, not the issues.
And
sorry, Fiona. I was just thinking it's quite interesting what you're saying. I think there's often a reorganization required internally to align sales and marketing much more closely so that you can do effective thought leadership and make sure it's actually revenue generating for you. So there's almost a lot of ways of reorganizing sales and marketing teams to get that sort of end-to-end impact, as you say, because you can't talk product to a board, you've got to talk issue. But there's got to be a connection between the issue and actually a product sale at the end of it, as you say. So it's there's a lot of work to do internally to get this stuff to work, isn't there?
Yeah, and then measure that as well, I suppose, with the technology in the background really doing that. And Tim, how do you see sales engaging in thought leadership campaigns in the future? What do you see as sort of changing?
Yeah, I concur with Claire's assessment, right? I've always been a firm believer that you earn the right to sell. So a good salesperson knows and sells their products, but a great salesperson knows and helps the customer, right? They're knowledgeable, they bring unique insight and value and perspective to a client. They're good listeners, so they know what questions to ask to truly understand a customer's challenges and needs. And then finally, they're strong communicators. They have this ability to synthesize and emphasize with the client's challenges and really provide, clear guidance, if you will, on how they can help overcome them and help drive business results. And you'll notice in those three things, none of those attributes are about selling speeds and feeds of their product, right?
Yeah.
And so thought leadership really, in my opinion, gives them a platform to open doors that might have been closed before. They're often mired in the administrative level, the admins, the middle managers, and really thought leadership is opening doors to the C-suite. It's opening doors, as Claire said, to the board, and new conversations with new and previously hard to reach contacts and prospects. Really enables them to bring unique value and insight to a client that a client can't easily attain on their own, right? And they can use this insight to foster dialogue and help clients shape their own strategies.
And let's talk a little bit around AI. Do you think, Caryn, that there's a risk that AI could limit this sort of rise in trust that we've seen for tech organizations in the US? And how should companies kind of think about that in terms of developing thought leadership content? Because I think there's a fear, isn't there, that there's going to be, there's so much content being generated all of the time now through AI methods that potentially people might see that being devalued. So how do you think we need to mitigate against that risk? as marketeers and thought leadership content providers?
I think you have, we really do have to put the data behind it, the conversations. And, as Tim was saying, that to engage with, the C-suite and bigger, better conversations, even about AI, right? You've got to challenge some current thinking. And that aligns to the most successful sales folks that, at least the research that CEB had done a few years back, the most successful sales personality is that of a challenger. And it's because this, everyone is looking, help me peek around the corners, help me see ahead, challenge my bias. And so if we start challenging some of the thinking around AI and challenging the buzz around it and bringing once again, grounded in data, the responsible conversation in, and just also using AI responsibly as we're collecting this information and making sure that we're bringing responsible AI into it, and we're, taking care of bias, we're taking care of, privacy, all of that. I think that's where you can win.
And Tim, have you got a view on the trust issue with AI and content development for large organizations, and particularly in the tech sector?
Yeah, I mean, I think what Caryn said is right. And at the heart of it, it really gets to authenticity. That is probably something that AI can't quite replicate right now when it comes to authentically understanding a customer's needs, a prospective customer's needs, understanding the needs of a given audience. And then importantly, as Caryn said, challenging that, right? If you go do ChatGPT, the last thing it's going to do is create a challenging statement. It's going to pick the mean and the norm and say, let's continue down the same path.
Excellent. Thank you.
Yeah, it's definitely, I think it's all about thought followership, isn't it? In terms of AI, by its very nature, it's creating more and more thought followership. So if your content is operating at that level, it will be even less effective than it was before. Thought leadership, being a thought maker it's by its very nature, it's about novelty. And that comes from the sorts of insights that, as you were saying, tech firms have insights into every enterprise in the world. And actually, those kind of insights come from a human. And in terms of how people want their thought leadership delivered as well, what the C-suite were telling us was they want it delivered by a human. They want to see an authentic human delivering it. They're quite happy for the data to be based on AI. And I think there's some tremendous opportunities in thought leadership data creation to use AI to enable us to do economic data, for example, that would previously have been far too expensive through hand coding for many clients to afford. So there's going to be a lot of innovations where AI can help us on the delivery end, but for the ideation, I think it makes Man Bites Dog Stories, these big ideas, more important than ever.
Yeah, I think that was borne out, wasn't it, Tim, in terms of, again, going back to some of the smaller engagements that you had. I say smaller, but, very bespoke engagements that you had with CFOs around the globe, that, delivering your insights to them personally and, gathering their sort of group thinking and views on that was really effective. So I think, that's quite an interesting aspect of, where AI just won't be able to perhaps deliver that personal.
Yeah, and I, to your point, I thought what was so intriguing to me is that as we brought the Finance 2035 platform to market, as we used it to engage senior finance executives in a meaningful dialogue, to those conversations just drew out more and more insights on how they're really thinking about these issues, how they're thinking about resolving them, what's not worked for them as much as what's worked for them. Yeah. And that's very, 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 very difficult to replicate other than through pure research and engagement.
Yeah, thank you. And Caryn, just sort of your thoughts on how thought leadership can sort of really help customers transform, like we think it does. We can see it in the market with many clients, but it's quite a bold statement, Can it actively help customers transform their business? And if you've got any examples of that, through the part, I always sort of think when with large tech firms, you've got such a massive ecosystem through your sort of partner channel as well, that I think that helps transformation. But I'd just be interested to know if you've got any sort of thoughts on that.
Well, you mentioned the partnership and the ecosystem. That's we rallied our partners around the topics. Everyone is looking for a way to have more of a relationship with the C-suites. The C-suites are, they're looking ahead. They're looking for that vision, and that's where the real opportunity really is. Be the visionary, right? Show them, help them peek around the corner to what's next. A lot of people are talking in their ears about what to do today, but a true, like even with our partners, it's do you have that matching 5-year vision, right? That's what they're looking for. And, I think what Tim said is true. It's these conversations, like what keeps people up at night. You don't really learn that in a survey. You get that in the conversation. And then the power of that is being able to make that emotional connection of what is keeping them up at night. Because that's the most effective marketing out there. It isn't just being the data provider. It's connecting that data to a personal value or stress that they're having.
Yeah.
So that's where we see there's, that's what the business leaders are looking for, even though they don't even know they're looking for it.
Yeah.
And, that's what the company's opportunity is in thought leadership.
And the opportunity to create that movement, as I think you mentioned as well, Tim, I think you called it a movement, which is a word I love. I think you're right. A good movement in the right direction for sort of positive growth across all sectors is what we're after.
I think one of the things that Caryn just said really sparked just an example. One of the key findings that came from the Finance 2035 study is that, while CFOs are being asked to do more and the office of the CFO is being asked to do more, at the same time, they're struggling with a massive talent crunch. Not enough employees, not enough modern skills and the like. And when we brought that up in some of the ongoing dialogues we had, thought some of the insights were really interesting that said, hey, you know what? I've got really smart people on the team. They can do analysis and so on, but they don't have the life experience and the like. And really what I'm looking for when I talk about talent is the soft skills. How do you synthesize those ideas down into key insights and the like? That is something, to Caryn's point, that we wouldn't have assumed in the data. And, in talking with CFOs and other finance leaders, it really began an interesting discussion on fleshing that out. They still had the same problem. They had this talent gap that they're trying to solve, but at the same time, they were looking for talents that could transcend, mathematical, analytic talents to much more soft skills that they needed.
Yeah. Excellent. Thank you very much. And sort of final question from me before we go into Q&A, and then we'll do a quick summary round. But Caryn, what do you think is holding sales teams back from using thought leadership more broadly? Do you have a view on that? How can we help them more? How can we join up more?
Making that tighter connection to how it will get them a sale. I mean, once again, tell me how I'm measured and I'm going to tell you how I perform. They're measured on selling product for the most part. Yeah. So unless you change that metric, you have to make a tighter connection. And, what I found successful, even in creating different thought leadership, when I was at an agency, was to get a couple of sales champions.
Yeah.
Get a couple of people willing to go there and try it and then share their experiences with their peers. But you've got to prove that value to them more than anything.
Yeah. And we always make a point of really involving sales as well as obviously the marketing folks right from the outset. When you're thinking about any big idea, as Claire's talked about, what that big story is, we test it. Got to test it with the sales teams as well. I think really sort of bring them along on that and get additional insight from them. And Tim, do you have any other sort of thoughts around sales teams and any sort of best practice that you think the people on the webinar listening today could sort of really benefit from?
No, I think Karen's absolutely right. To the best of your ability, you're usually dealing with large sales teams with varying degrees of sales philosophies. So if you can find those few champions that are turning this into a much more meaningful discussion, including the ability to engage higher in an organization, which is what we're seeing, than they might have done before, so that it is more a strategic referral down rather than a a
Yeah.
tactical line item discussion up. It makes a big difference.
Brilliant. Thank you. Okay, we've got about 12 minutes left, so I was going to just open the floor to some questions. So if anyone listening today has got any questions, please do send them through on the Q&A function. I've got a question in that is directly for you, Claire. So what's your advice for someone who is currently a thought whisperer? What first steps can I take to improve or start my thought leadership? Where would someone start with that?
So being a thought whisperer is actually a really good place to be as a starting point because it suggests there's some great insights in the organization in the first place. And actually, the ideation piece is actually the hardest part of that journey. So if you've got experts in the organization with insights, that is a fantastic place to start. So now it's about working out why those insights are not making it to the market. Perhaps there is a level of risk aversion. Or perhaps a lack of capability in some places. So diagnosing why this thinking has never made it to the surface, and then going through a process to turn those insights into big ideas. So we would recommend a co-creation brainstorming process to really understand the business, to create a big idea that links back to the sales conversation that you want to have. So working together with sales and marketing to get that. And then from there, you can go through that thought leadership process of building the big idea, building the data, designing that gateway service, that sales experience that helps you scale it through your sales workforce. And then when you launch it, thinking about the roll in as much as the roll out. So Tim and Caryn have just been talking about some of the challenges of really engaging sales teams. But if you get this right, you can really scale what you're doing right across the organization in line with their sales philosophy and the sales methodologies they're using. So spending time on the roll-in, doing sales training with people, showing them how you can use it, creating maybe some digital benchmarking tools and things that they can use with clients to assess their position and then how the products and services of the company can contribute to improving that position.
Brilliant. Well, thank you very much. And Tim, a question for you. What type of content do you find appeals most to the C-suite audiences? We've talked a bit about the webinars, your events reports, but is there anything that you'd like to sort of hone in on in terms of what you think the C-suite are taking a look at right now?
Yeah, I mean, I guess you could answer that question in two ways. It could be the quality of the content itself, and then the format that it takes. And so, from a quality standpoint, I think it's very clear, and certainly is why Man Bites Dog is celebrating its anniversary. It is doing core primary research that really is helping given audiences think about and pushing them to think about key challenges and problems and their own function, in new ways, right? So bringing that unique and valuable insight is paramount. It all needs to start with, as Caryn said earlier, a great story in that sense. From a format standpoint, even your own research says, that C-suite is consuming, at least on a weekly basis, thought leadership through a host of different channels. And we try to ensure that we can, create bite-sized snippets of our content to support promotion through kind of social channels, through other digital channels, as well as full content report, supplementing that with video, and not just ourselves articulating the findings, but also having other CFOs share or hone in on one particular insight. And so that is, as Claire said earlier, the thing I love about thought leadership, if done right, you can turn it into a franchise of value. In being able to not just deliver a report, but foster dialogue, engage through multiple channels, and continue to build new insights to continue that dialogue for a very long time.
Excellent, thank you. And this is a question actually for both Caryn and Tim. What has the response been from sales leadership regarding thought leadership and relationship building, knowing that this may extend the pipeline as opposed to accelerate it? Have you had any sort of direct feedback from the sales teams? I know for both of your thought leadership platforms, you had very high level championship from your own C-suite, which I think probably really helped that sort of ripple effect through the organization. But have you had any other sort of sales leadership commentary or thoughts regarding thought leadership? They come to you
and also, do you agree that's quite an interesting thought, that there's a perception that it might extend the sales
pipeline,
rather than contract and accelerate it? So yeah, I'd be interested in your views on that perception too.
Well, I would, yes, when we get our CTO and our CIO out there talking about this, then the sales teams can draft off of that, and and having that executive involvement has helped us. But it's not about extending the sales cycle, as Tim said. It's hey, we're actually getting to an audience that we weren't relevant with, that can actually tell the customers that we normally talk with, I want this. Like, we need to go here. And it helps actually craft the RFP in our favor. It can shorten the cycle if we have that right bridge.
Yeah. Excellent.
Yeah, and I fully agree with that. It doesn't elongate the sales cycle, it elevates it. If used correctly. But to answer your question, more directly, there was one area that I think your latest research was incredibly insightful and valuable in debunking this. But we, like many other technology companies, partner with management consultancies, systems integrators, and the like, who obviously build a lot of their own reputation on on thought leadership. And there was, the one question that caught me off guard was, well, what does that mean? Why would they believe us? Wouldn't they go to the GSI? And so the core principles we talked about at the beginning is that we're, even our best partners don't know as much about our own technology and how it's being used and how our customers are getting value as we do. And so being able to bring that unique insight, and not just talk from a technology perspective, but also from a business transformation perspective, right? So that's really what thought leadership is adding, is holistically, providing that guidance, unique value and insight, in the same way that CFOs in this case are trying to think through the problem. They don't view technology as the means to the end. They view it as a enabler for them to achieve some business outcome.
Brilliant. Thank you. I've got a few more questions. So another sales-related one here. As a sales rep who has very little influence over the company-wide strategy regarding thought leadership, does an individual contributor have potential to make an impact to the C-suite, or does it have to come from other high-level leaders? So Claire, I don't know if you've got any thoughts on that. How can people, if you're in the sales team in a wide-reaching global organization, how can you get involved in perhaps coming up with some ideas or contributing at least to a major marketing strategy?
So I think having that kind of attitude is both, I think, career enhancing and success enhancing. So if you're willing to put your hand up to collaborate with marketing and brand as a subject matter expert that is focused on a particular area of the business or a particular type of customer or sector of customer, I would put your hand up to get involved, because if you're able to get involved in the big content, it's much more scalable and can then be scaled right across the organization. As an individual, I would be looking at what is the major content that your company is producing and making sure you're getting a hold of it. Because if the sales team is not getting that stuff, there's a fundamental breakdown in the organization somewhere, and you won't be the only one who isn't being enabled with all of the content to have the conversations that you want to have. Or you may be in an organization where that kind of thought leadership isn't happening. So what you need to do is more of a bottom-up approach. And I think people want to hear from authentic human experts. So as an individual, you still have a big opportunity to be a thought leader on your area of expertise, choosing the right platform for yourself. For example, LinkedIn, the algorithm now prioritizes content from experts above content from companies. So actually you getting out there and putting forward some really insightful thinking is really valuable. But where that can be a bit limited is when you try and scale that across an organization, it's just not really possible. So ideally, you'd be going in a top-down approach. But if you can bring the two together, that would be great. And good luck with it.
Well, thank you. Thank you very much. We're nearly at time, but before we close up, I just wanted to sort of ask Tim, Caryn, and Claire if there was if you had to sort of summarize, the secrets of success around thought leadership. If you can crystallize that, I know that I'm not giving you much time. What would that feel like, success, in your experience? Who wants to go first?
I'll take a swing at it. So three things stand out to me as I think about thought leadership and what's required for success. I think, number one is embracing a thought leadership approach that's globally led and locally sensitive. We are very intentful to make sure that we had statistically relevant representation in our sample of specific countries, our priority countries, priority industries, segments, etc. I think the second, which in part, I would say I learned a bit from you, is do your research before your research, right? To avoid kind of preconceived biases, so you can, uncover the true essence of the problems and make sure that as you go out to field your research, you're really answering the questions that need to be answered. And then the last one I mentioned before, kind of, if you will, channel your inner Disney, right? View thought leadership as a franchise of value. So when you have a core asset, think about all the ways you can use it to engage and foster dialogue in the market.
Yeah, I love that. Channel your inner Disney. I'm making a note. You're right.
Well said.
That franchise is a workable model that is definitely, we've seen success there. So thank you very much, Tim. It's brilliant. Caryn, over to you. Any sort of lasting thoughts on success?
Building on what Tim said in that franchise, it's think about the story arc beyond the first big idea.
Yeah.
And how in ongoing activities can you use data collection? Like if like the index that we created, that is designed to get some now self-generated data collection, right? And it's an ongoing effort that then helps people look by their industry segment. So once again, we're getting a little more, talk to them about their market and are they behind or are they ahead? But it's an ongoing thing. And that's the one key. It's like, keep it going, keep learning, keep finding those insights so you can continue the conversation.
Yeah. Brilliant. Thank you very much. And Claire, final thoughts?
Yeah, so for me, there's three things. I think firstly, it's about having a long-term growth platform. So as Tim talked about having a franchise and Caryn talked about thinking about the beyond, what's a long-term growth platform for the business that you can use to support all of your sales, marketing and brand activity? Like Man-Dog's first ever project is still going 20 years on. We run things like the Sustainable Cities Index, which has been going for 10 years. These things gather momentum and impact, and it grows every year. So what's going to be a growth platform for the business? Secondly, remember that the role internally is just as important as the role out, and engage the sales organization, which is interestingly how much this has come up. It's finding that bridge from brand to sales. So some kind of gateway service, benchmarking, some way you can use the content and the research to support the conversation. and generate demand for those services. And then finally, and this is the thing too many people forget, I think, have a big idea at the heart of it. You know, this is a bit like the Find Your Disney thing, isn't it? There's got to be a Man Bites Dog story, otherwise you're not a thought maker. So I think finding that big idea is really key.
So we'll keep searching for those big ideas, I think. And a massive thank you to all of you today for this discussion. It is really interesting. It's going to keep going, no doubt. Hopefully, we've created a movement with thought makers and sort of helping businesses move into that top right quadrant. So again, massive thank you. I hope everyone found that really as insightful as I did. I've learned loads of new stuff today, and I do this all the time. So appreciate all of the insights. Thank you again, and hopefully see you all soon. And don't forget to download the report if you so wish. It's up on our website. Thank you. Cheers.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you.